Okay, so we have our next speaker getting ready here to come up and talk to us. I work in the Watershed Protection Department, and I get to work with fabulous, passionate people like Staryn Wagner, who also works in the Watershed Protection Department. He's an environmental scientist, and he's been with the City of Austin for 8 years. He works with the surface water team, and so he has a lot of experience with many of the things that Heather was talking about. But I just wanted to put in one plug for the third day of landscape professional training. Is going to be about plants. We're going to have a lot of talks about trees, so if you want to hear more about trees, I would come to that day. And I'm trying to get it set up where they can do the aeration of the root systems. What is that called? Not vertical mulching, but you get one of those air spades, an air spade. We're going to try to have a demonstration over at Zucker so you guys can see how that works. So that's what I'm hoping for the third day. That's February 12th. But today and right now we have Staryn to talk to us about leaky cisterns, and he might talk about some other things too. I told him he kind of could talk about whatever he wanted. So please welcome Staryn Wagner.
Heather, that was fantastic. I wish I could match up to that, but it was really good information. So my name is Staryn Wagner. I work for the City of Austin Watershed Protection Department. And what I started doing was monitoring streams. And as we did that, and my team's been doing that since the 80s, so we have a lot of good knowledge in the team and historic data. Started thinking that I feel like we're just monitoring the decline here and looking at what things we could do to improve it. And so out of that came our Grow Zone program, which is where we got the city to pull back mowing on the streams, and thus you now have the beautiful ragweed forests along the edges of the stream, which, as hopefully most of you understand, eventually are going to become good forests. But I even love the ragweed, except for sometimes, like right now, I don't even like the juniper. And then from that, we started moving further away and worked with urban forestry with Ready, Set, Plant, which is where we went in and we do a lot of seedling plantings. Going in and starting our riparian restoration, we realized how many miles of stream we have and how much effort that would be to match the very first project we did, which included bringing in potted plants and putting in irrigation and a whole lot of maintenance connected to that. Given the miles of stream that we have in Austin, we'd never accomplish our goals. So we looked for a more passive approach to that. And out of that came Ready, Set, Plant, where we take seedlings, so the bare root seedlings, and go and put those in high density, understanding that we'll have a high chance of a high rate of mortality. But you put in 100 plants, if you have 90% mortality, you put them in 3 feet on center and never gone back to water, and you still have 10 good trees coming up, which for one effort is pretty good. And you'll have healthy trees because there's no root girdling or anything there. And then moving even further away from the stream in trying to improve stream health, we're now pushing forth with a green stormwater infrastructure effort called Clearwater Revival. We can thank Todd Jackson for that. Which we actually have checked with legal, and it's cool to use that. So how that's working, and it was great that you brought up Waller Creek, which is where one of the projects you're working on is, and love that. One of our most impacted urban streams. It's been the focus of development since day one. We are working on what we're calling Waller 3. It's the headwaters of Waller Creek. We're just getting started right now, so we don't have anything in the ground. Everything's in development. But the goal is for us to go in and for all the public properties, do as much green stormwater infrastructure as we can. And in a year, we'll have our education and outreach program put together. And with that, we'll push it out to the private sector, to individuals, homeowners, property owners, about what they can do with green stormwater infrastructure, key components being rain gardens, rainwater harvesting, berms, swales, porous pavers, to try and get and collect up to a 1.8-inch rain event and keep as much of that on the property as possible. Our goal is, because I'm water quality based, is to improve the health of the stream. So what I'm looking to do is cut off the hydrograph for all these storm events that we get, and reduce the erosion and flooding that go on in Waller Creek, which heavily impacts the health of the streams. In addition, all that water that we'd be infiltrating into the ground in time will make its way to the streams in the form of base flow. I can't quantify how much that'll be. We have rain gauges on Waller, or flow gauges on Waller Creek, which are monitored by USGS, and we have historic data, and so from this point on forth, we'll be able to see the impact of that. But that's what brings me to you today to talk about one of the key things that I'm focusing on, and that is leaky cisterns with rainwater harvesting. I could probably explain it in about a minute and a half, so I decided to stretch this out a little bit. How many people here have installed a rainwater harvesting system? Hands longer so I can do a quick count. So we've got about 15 to 20. How many have done one larger than a 500-gallon system? Okay, so about 6, 7. What about with a pump on it? All right, same. Okay, so what I'm working on is trying to set these up, at least for the public property side of it, as maintenance-free as possible, because what I have to do is talk AISD and Texas-owned facilities and TxDOT, which is another Texas-owned facility. I have to talk entities other than myself into letting me install systems on their grounds that they will then maintain into perpetuity. And as it is now, mowing the lawns seems to be as much as they want to do. So what I'm trying to do is design these rain harvesting systems so that at least a good portion of the water that they collect just passively drains off into the soils and infiltrates down in with no effort on anybody's part other than as minor amount of maintenance as possible. And this will begin just immediately. As soon as the cisterns fill up, it'll start leaking out through whatever means that we impose. And I have a couple of options in this that I'm going to cover. That wasn't the button. All right. So not knowing what everybody here knows communally about this, cover a couple things. Keys to rainwater harvesting is, I've got this, is water conservation. You have less restrictions, so the restrictions imposed by Austin Water Utility to reduce our water consumption of potable water. I'm sure most of you are aware of limits on when you can irrigate, to what level. You're not supposed to wash cars. So that you can do with rainwater harvesting. Reduce stormwater impacts. So as I'd mentioned earlier, we're going to reduce the peak events or the events that occur in the stream, so there won't be as much erosion because every rain event won't make it, every raindrop is not going to make it to the stream within 20 minutes of hitting the ground. Instead, we'll be infiltrating this, and a lot of this rain is going to take weeks to months to make its way to the stream, meaning that when it rains, even a small event isn't going to fill up and engorge the stream channel and rip out and carry away all the soil and vegetation that's trying to get established there. If you want to go to the extra effort, the additional uses, you can connect it up to appliances, you can filter it for drinking water. Now, the truth is, I'm not sure what the limitations are here within the city of Austin. I'm not pushing these things, but there are other options, and you can connect them up to toilets. They're also good for locations that have poor infiltration. So if you're looking to capture your stormwater and rain gardens or other possibilities that you want to use aren't going to work very well because your infiltration rates in your soil aren't good. If you can capture it with rain tanks, with cisterns, then you have more time with which to put it out and allow it to infiltrate into the soils or be used for whatever purposes you need it for. And there'll be a free trip to space if you do enough of them. And SpaceX will give us one. So the basic components of any system. First, you've got to capture the water. So you've got your catchment. Primarily rooftops is what we're looking at, whether they're sheds, houses, carports, something up high so that it's going to drain down in. We're not looking for runoff off of impervious surfaces like parking lots and driveways. So the water in general will be fairly clean anyway, but I'll cover that still. Our collection system, which is your gutter system. Filtration, which I think is a very important part of this system, in particular for maintenance. You can have screens on your gutters, so that's sort of the very first point at which you can start removing debris and pollutants from the water. You can have a leaf filter, which I've got a picture of later on, which is somewhere in between the gutter and the first flush system. And then you have the first flush system. So the leaf filter is another component that's built that the water flows down. Any debris in that is going to land on this screen and get washed off while the water itself flows straight through the screen and continues on through. The screen also plays an important role of keeping mosquitoes and other critters out of your rainwater. And then your first flush system. So all your smaller dissolved particles that are, geez, I talk a lot. 5 minutes. Okay. First flush system, which is going to take all your smaller particles, the bird poop, everything else that you really don't want in it. Your storage system, which will be your rain tanks, variety of those. Overflow, which I recommend going to a rain garden before it makes its way out. Treatment, which would be for potable water. I'm not going to worry about that at all. And then your delivery system. There's your leaf eater, your poly tank, first flush system that has this nice little ball that floats up and stops the flow through, which I don't think is extremely critical. But and then these flap valves, which you can put at any of your downspouts. Nice part about them is, once again, they keep insects and other critters out of your system. This is what your system is going to look like. Given my time, take a good look at that. Okay. Calculations. You're going to want to figure out your supply. Key point. How much water can you get? So you're not looking at surface area of your roof. You're looking at your plan view footprint of the roof. It doesn't matter what the slope is on your roof. The area which the rain is going to fall is always going to be the same. And then look at your demand. Primarily, I'm focused on outdoor demand. So if you're going to use it for irrigation, car washing, filling up the pool, all these things, those are your water demand. And then your indoor stuff, you can worry about that. Make sure your supply is greater than demand, or else your system is just not going to be what you wanted it to be. And to give you an idea of how much water we're talking, on a 2,000 square foot pad or catchment area, a 2-inch rain, which is pretty big rain, it's, I think, 95th percentile. Storm events are 2 inches or below, will give you 2,300 gallons of rain. So a leaky cistern is one that is designed to draw down immediately upon the rain tank filling. It can be passive or automated, so you can have a pump on it, or like the ones that I'm trying to design for these public facilities, it's going to be passive. It'll be done through underground infiltration, or you can have a very slow release surface. If you have a drainage path that is soil, garden, whatever, the infiltration rate you've got worked out, you can figure out at what rate you need to drain this tank, that it will continue to go out, but also drain down so that you don't have what they refer to as nuisance water, which is any water that stands for more than 48 to 72 hours and can be a problem for mosquito breeding. And then the size and method that you use can be based on your infiltration rates of the soil. That's what a system looks like. You can see, got the leaf eater, got your first flush system, your main tank, and then, how's this for you? And then an overflow on one side. And I have this system set up because one of the concerns at the independent school district was if I bring a lot of downspouts to one tank, and then the tank fills up, all of my overflow from multiple downspouts is coming out of one point, which means an increased flow, increased erosion, increased problems from that. So I set this system up to have, when the tank fills up, it drains out another spot. Here's an example of a bi-speed drawdown. So I don't know how well you can see that, but off the tank, I have a pipe coming up. Within that pipe, I have multiple valves. if I say, okay, I have X amount of need of rainwater for all these varieties of things, but I'm willing to give a certain amount towards this water quality effort, or actually, just the deep watering of your or of your landscape, your trees, your yard, you can set a valve at that point to which you have a drawdown that draws down until it hits that valve level. And then after that, you have another valve below, which is your other uses. So you can always maintain a supply in there and do these passive or immediate drawdown systems. Benefits of these leaky systems, some I've covered, but reduce stormwater runoff, so less erosion, flooding, deep watering for your vegetation. For people who have slabs, a lot of those folks who are on the clay soils and didn't have a good slab poured have to maintain a certain moisture level around the house so that their slab doesn't crack. This is a great use of this system. On that dual speed system, the first half can drain out quickly so that it's ready to receive the next rain, and that's the key reason for trying to get that tank empty as quick as possible or partially empty. And then have the second system, a much slower drip system, so that you have much more long-term deep water infiltration. And it's adding to the groundwater. If you're doing this to meet some water quality requirements, then you can refer to the City of Austin's Environmental Criteria Manual 1.6.7D. I have all these references at the end. I think it'll be online as well, so you don't have to write that down real quick. Problems and solutions. What's my time? I'm done. I'm going to go to this for a second. We're on break now. The rebates, talking to Austin Water Utility, they want the property owners to do the rebates because they want buy-in. They want them to be connected to the system. And I realize that, and having talked to people, it's a daunting thing for them. It's not a difficult task, but it's just something they haven't done. They don't know what to expect. They haven't looked into it. And so that's just one of the things that's keeping them from moving forward with this. You guys can make money selling these systems and while doing good. And so if you were to get this rebate started for them, it would take a large portion of the hesitation that they have out of this. And in addition to that, the maximum rebate that the city offers is $5,000. So up to $5,000 of this system, and that would only be half of the system. So if you put in a $10,000 system, your client will get $5,000 of that back. So they're getting a $10,000 system for half the price. If you took care of the site drawing, the system drawing, and the operation and maintenance guide, those are the three key components that are needed in the application form, then really all they're doing is filling out their name and some other incidentals. And you'd have to go through all of that before doing the system anyway. And if it's a pressurized system, that has to be turned in and approved by Austin Water Utility before you can move forward actually with installing the system with a guaranteed rebate. And so I think that's a key thing for you guys to remember is there's this rebate, same as when you go into Best Buy or somewhere to buy something and they say, oh yeah, go grab that yellow thing off the rack there and you'll get 50% off this or $100 rebate for this. You take care of that and you've just made yourself a lot cheaper without actually having to take any reduction in the amount that you're making on the system. I've got a variety of resources here that I think would be useful for you if you want these. Some of them are the environmental criteria guidelines for stuff, for percolation or infiltration tests for doing that to the soil, which is a critical thing to figure out. You don't want to be putting too much water onto the soil without it being ready to accept it. And yeah, that's it. I was done a little bit ago. Anybody have any questions or want to refute anything I've said? Or I'm always up for any sort of discussion. Nope. All right. Well, thank you for having me.
All right.
Sure thing.
And you guys, it kind of goes without saying, but I'm going to say it anyway. All of the speakers today are happy to talk to you guys after this if you have any follow-up questions, because I know that we're all here to help share information. So we're going to take a quick break, 10 minutes, come back in, and then we'll finish up the rest of the day.